How are you doing?
Pretty good. Can't complain a bit.
Okay, well, okay. Hey, and just remind me, what time is it with you at the moment?
It's only about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, 7 o'clock. Is this your usual get-up time, or did you get up early this morning?
No, that's late. I usually am up about 5:30.
5:30, man. How do you do that?
Well, just the alarm goes off, and I, in my head, and I said, "It's time to go."
Sorry, I heard you're almost 80 now. In a few weeks, you turn 80. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. It's the 59th anniversary of my 21st birthday.
Oh, that's how you call it. That's good. But you're still working, and I believe you're quite busy at the moment. You got a lot of guests over there in San Diego, haven't you?
Yes, we got all of our sales people and all of our consulting partners here for big 2-day meetings, so it's great.
Fantastic. Okay, so what are you going to do for the rest of the day? You're going to sit there and listen or talk a lot to people, or?
Today, we've got them all broken up into their groups of their regions, so I'm going to go into each region and pump them up a little bit.
Pump up a little bit, good. Hey, we got 6 people actually, 6 people who prepared questions for you. And I just want to start with, giving them a chance to pose their question, and let's see what you can come up with. First one actually is Joost Duvekot. Please give a warm hand to Joost Duvekot. And it's important that you get as close as possible to the microphone and state your question to Mr. Ken Blanchard.
Okay, hello, Mr. Blanchard.
A bit louder, please.
Consultancy organization Korn Ferry has recently published an international research showing that most CEOs cannot cope well with the rapid changes in their markets. And the problem is perhaps even bigger in the Netherlands, because we only start to move if everybody agrees on the course. And we call this in the Netherlands our polder culture. We are famous about this as our wooden shoes and windmills. And how should we deal with this kind of disappointing conclusion?
Okay, interesting.
Well, my feeling is that if you're not willing to deal with change as a CEO, you ought to step down and get out of your position, because change is a way of life today. I've often said, if you stop learning, you might as well lie down and let them throw the dirt on you, because you're already dead. Change is a way of life. And one of the things that's really interesting, I wrote a book with Terry Waghorn, who lives over near you all, called Mission Possible, How to Create a World-Class Organization While There's Still Time, a number of years ago. And he said that there's 2 aspects of running an organization. One is managing the present, and the second is creating the future. And he said, I think we make a mistake sending people with present time responsibilities away to plan the future, because they'll kill your future, because they're either overwhelmed with it or have vested interests. And what you really need is an office of the future. And ideally, an organization would have a president of the present and a president of the future. And so when we came around with that concept, my wife was the president of our company, and she said, man, that's what I want to do. I want to be in charge of the future. So she stepped down as president and took over the office of the future. And I think it's a really important concept, is that somebody's got to be out there looking at what's going on, what kind of changes you're going to make to survive, because great companies are going out of business because they got their heads in the dirt, and they must have CEOs that aren't comfortable with change. So get a CEO who's willing to change and wants to set up an office of the future.
Interesting. Thank you very much for that. Hey, let's move on to Edwin van Kersbergen. Edwin van Kersbergen, who also has a question to you.
Yes, I have. Who was the best manager or supervisor you have had in your career, and why?
Okay.
Well, I have to say my father. He was retired as an admiral in the Navy. And I'll never forget, I won the president of the 7th grade in junior high school, and I came home and I was all pumped up, I'm the president of the 7th grade. And my father said, I think your leadership training begins now. He said, Ken, now that you're president, don't ever use your position, because great leaders are great because people trust and respect them, not because they have power. And he said it's a myth in the military that it's always my way or the highway. He said, sure, in battle, somebody's got to call the signals, but if you act like a really big deal and you're the one that's better than everybody else, your men will shoot you before the enemy. and so he was always there for me in terms of helping me as a leader and get me excited about leadership. And so he was really an amazing guy. And then I've had a wonderful time. I've written over 60 books, and my mother always said, why don't you write a book by yourself? I've only written 2 by myself, one on golf. So many people held my golf game. I didn't know who to write it with. And another one on my spiritual journey, but the rest have all been co-authored. So I love to learn from people. So I've worked with some great folks, including Norman Vincent Peale, you know, that wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, and Truett Cathy, who founded Chick-fil-A, and, you know, a whole bunch of fun people.
Great, great. But it's interesting to know that your learning journey actually, when it comes to leadership, already started when you were in 7th grade. Man, that's early. Wow. Hey, there's another one here who wants to ask a question, and his name is Ernst-Jan Honsmerk. Ernst-Jan Honsmerk, please step up to the microphone.
Hi, Ken. Long time no see.
How are you doing?
Great, thank you
Good.
very much.
How you doing?
Good to see you. Great, thank you. Ken, on behalf of many Dutch leaders and managers that we trained during the years, there's one question that keeps putting up every time in every group, is how to cope with demotivated people and getting them back on track. What's your vision about that?
What to do about demotivated people? Okay.
Well, the first thing is to go talk to them. Say, you know, my observation is that you're not that excited about what you're doing, and I want to talk to you about how I could get you aboard, because I could use your energy. And a lot of times what happens with those people is people write them off and don't even approach them. Go approach them and say you really want them upon your team. And if they say, well, I don't think this is for me, then you say, well, how can I help you, you know, find the right job in another company, you know? But I think it's going to them and inviting them to be a part of the team, because you really think that they could make a contribution. And I think you'll blow their minds, because most of the time they think that they're being written off and they can hide without anybody noticing. So I just go and talk to them. They're a good human being, and see what you can do to pump them up.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much, Ken. Bye-bye.
Hey, Ellen van Hattem is the next one. 4th in line, Ellen van Hattem.
I'm honored, Mr. Blanchard. Almost everyone can understand that situational leadership has added value. At the same time, it reminds me of world peace. Everyone is in favor of it, and yet we continue to argue. Accepting this fact, what can you do as a communication or other advisor to stimulate managers to adopt situational leadership? Even some small steps would be nice.
Okay.
I tell you what we have really found is that the best way to do training in situational leadership or anything else is to train people in their team. So often we send people off to training by themselves, and then we, you know, depend on them to go back to the work and start to apply and use it. But if they come to training with their team and they're actually working on problems while they're during training, they're already starting to experience what it's like to implement it and all. And that's the way we've dealt with that. We want to work much more in our training with teams rather than individuals. And people say, well, you can't take a whole team off of work. Why not? If they also can work on problems while they're going through training. Well, how can we use that in terms of what we're dealing with this customer or this person or what have you? So I think that if you did that, you'd find a whole different thing. But when you train people one-on-one and then they get back to work, everybody's waiting for them, and they're in basket and their email and everybody is jammed and they just are exhausted right away. But if they're working with their team, they can't go back and hide.
Very interesting. So actually, if you're saying that the whole social situation that people work in has a large impact on their behavior, you should move the whole social situation to the training location. That's better. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Interesting. Hey, let's move on to Erik van der Kolk. Erik van der Kolk. And you have a question about agile, or a more agile approach, I believe.
Yes, good morning. I have a question
Yes.
about the agile management approach, because in my opinion many organizations adopt a more agile approach of management. They get rid of the supervisor layer and ask the team to manage themselves somehow. And often not because it's lead to the best approach, but because they think they can cut cost this way. My question, what do you think? What is a good way to move from the more classical top-down management approach to a more agile or a bottom-up approach?
Okay, very clear.
What we have found is that, particularly with the younger people, they don't like the top-down leadership approach, you know. And what they like was what we talk about is side-by-side leadership. In other words, they don't want necessarily to have your job, but they want you to realize that they can make a contribution. And I think that just eliminating managers isn't an answer. I think it's eliminating a philosophy that's the answer, which is it's my way or the highway, and all the brains are in my office. We try to move people from me to we, which is a whole different way to deal with things. And so I think people can work well in the team, but there ought to still be somebody who's kind of facilitating that team in some kind of way, rather than just going in and saying, okay, here's the team, what do you think we ought to all do? No, I think somebody needs to move that team from, orientation, we say in the beginning, through where they really are a high-performing team. When you get a really high-performing team, you go and observe them, you can't tell who the leader is, because they've done a really good job of that. But it's all side-by-side leadership, not top-down.
Well, it's really interesting what you're saying. So the philosophy should be changed, not the structure necessarily. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ursula, for your question. Let's move on to the last person who has a question. His name is Christopher Marks, and it's about drive and energy, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm Christopher. I've been an entrepreneur for, ever, really. And I sometimes feel that my team doesn't share my drive and energy. They love their job, but it's still a job, not a calling. So what would your advice be for me, being a young millennial leader who has to inspire change in a time where everybody seems distracted?
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I've seen that, with young entrepreneurs, they're all excited, and everybody else, is excited, but it is a job. And again, I think, as I said earlier, is how do you bring them together and say, you probably have been observed to me, this is really my life, I'm really excited, and I don't expect this to be your life, but how can you really become part of the team so I can really count on your energy and all, so we can all go forward together and all. And so I don't think you want them to change their lifestyle, but you really want to say, I really need your energy here. And it's really interesting is I wrote a book called The 1 Minute Entrepreneur a number of years ago, but there's 4 characteristics to be a great entrepreneur, and see if it makes sense for you. One is the test of joy. If you don't really love what you're doing, you're never going to work hard enough to be good at it. And the second is the test of purpose, which is that at some point you got to find people who will pay you money to do what you love to do. Otherwise, you got a hobby. And I always say to entrepreneurs, don't start an organization until you got some customers, And the next one is the test of efficiency, which is a lot of people think that the best way to increase profit is to manage costs. And you have to manage costs, but you ought to spend a lot of time on how do you increase sales, you know, not just in that. And then the last one is the test of perpetual prosperity, is if you're not doing something that helps other human beings, you're never going to be very successful over a period of time. And it's exciting, and to get other people to join you is really interesting. This is the 40th year of our company, and my wife and I, we couldn't even spell the word entrepreneur when we started. You know, some presidents from the Young Presidents Organization, you know, said we should start our own company. And it was really interesting, but we got some help, and they provided customers for us, and now we're celebrating our 40th year and have over 300 people and offices in Toronto and London and in the Far East. So it's fun. I like to be an entrepreneur.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for all the questions that you asked. Hey, Ken, can I ask a last, let's say, more personal question?
Sure.
Okay. You know, this is actually the final MBA one day that we're doing here today. And, you know, I'm, of course, making plans for what I'm going to do next. And maybe some people in the audience are always also thinking about, you know, what am I going to do with the next, let's say, 10 or 15 years in my career? I recently turned 50. Suppose the almost 80-year-old Ken Blanchard could go back in time and could give some advice to his younger version, to his, you know, the 50-year-old Ken Blanchard. What would the advice be? If you could go back in time, what would you advise yourself 30 years younger?
Well, I think you've got a chance to take a look at the book I wrote, Refire, Don't Retire. Make the rest of your life the best of your life. And I would have liked to have had that concept when I was 50 years old, because what it really says is that there's 4 parts of your life that you need to constantly be refiring, whether you're, you know, running the MBA for a day or whatever you're doing. One is, what are you doing intellectually to stimulate your mind, to grow intellectually, you know? What are you reading? What are you learning? So you got to be a learner, as I said, or lie down, and because you're dead anyway. The second is, what are you doing? What are you doing physically to keep yourself in shape? And I wish I had thought about that more when I was 50, because it would make it easier now when I'm 80 to keep a routine going, because, you know, without your health, you're a problem. So you need to exercise, take good care of your body. The third area, which I was just beginning in when I was in my about 50, was where was I spiritually? And I'm not talking about religion-wise, but just recognizing that I'm not the center of the universe. You know, that I'm really here to serve, to be served. And so, like, my mission statement now is to be a loving teacher and example of simple truths that helps myself and others to awaken of the presence of God in our lives, so we realize we're here to serve and not be served. And so I think that's an important thing. And then the last one is, what are you doing emotionally with relationships? Are you going out with the same people to the same restaurants, doing the same things? What are you doing to develop new relationships and meeting new people and all that kind of thing? And so I think that was one that we always did pretty well. So the intellectual and the relationships one, we did pretty well. I should have done better on the physical and the spiritual earlier, but it's those 4 ones are really key, I think, to say, I'm still alive, I'm still ready to go. People say, when are you going to retire, Blanchard? I said, when he takes me up, you know, I mean, because I'm having too much fun, you know.
Hey, Ken, yeah, applause, a big hand. I really, really want to thank you for working with us. Also, you know, the past few years that we worked together, it was fantastic. Also, many, many thanks for this week. You know, twice that we had this conversation, and you're always, you know, spot on, improvising, always coming up with great answers. And also thank you very much for the personal answers that you gave in the last part. I'm going to get me a copy of the book. I'm going to refire and not retire, I promise, okay?
Okay, we'll do it.
Hey, Ken, thank you very much. Have a great day there in San Diego. And again, many, many thanks for being with us. Thank you very much. Ken Blanchard.
Well, good. Take care of yourselves.
Fantastic.